Hello and welcome, everyone. This is a demonstration of the IcePick Energy Zones mapping tool, and I'll start with a few slides just to give you a quick introduction of the project. And today I will be concentrating on reports in the tool. So there are 19 different reports that you can call up, and we'll be adding new reports for energy water during this fiscal year. Right now the phone lines are muted as long as we don't have any problems with people being on hold and playing music or something. I'll leave the line open, and I would welcome any questions that you have. So don't hesitate to chime in and ask a question at any time. So generally the background of this project is that it was funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, the Office of Electricity Delivery and Energy Reliability. And initially the funds came from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and more recently that office has continued to support the tool out of their operating budget. And it was a collaborative effort with IcePick, which is our acronym for the Eastern Interconnection States Planning Council. 3 national labs were involved in the project, so I'm from Argonne National Laboratory. We also had quite a few people from Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory contributing. They provided quite a bit of energy data and subject matter expertise and other ways they helped on the project. IcePick is we get a lot of questions about why is the extent of the map only the eastern United States. Well, that relates to the Eastern Interconnection, which is the electrical grid that supplies that region, including parts of Canada. And then there's also a major interconnection in the western United States, and most of Texas is on its own energy grid called ERCOT. So this tool is publicly available, and the home page is shown at the upper right. I'll have the URL later. And it provides a large library of data. It has models. I won't be talking about those today, but the models allow you to look at different types of energy generation technologies and map where they would be most suitable on a regional basis. I'll be covering the reports today, and there's also a policy database off the home page that is pretty ambitious in scope and has quite a bit of information about policies and incentives for these types of energy generation technologies, as well as things like environmental regulations and other things that would be needed to if you're siting a new power plant. And the tool was really designed for energy professionals of many types, as well as regulators, researchers, and that sort of thing. But it is a pretty versatile tool, so as long as you're interested in energy and its connection to siting and the environment, you should find something useful in the tool. We've added some new features. I mentioned those on the last webinar. I just wanted to echo that again. So originally those buttons at the top left, there was an areas and corridors button, which has been split into areas and corridors separately. Areas are regions you can draw on the map and you can do analysis on them, and then corridors are linear. So what we're adding this year is the ability to designate 2 endpoints and have the system generate a route for you between those endpoints, taking into account a whole series of siting factors. So you need to decide on those siting factors and weight them in advance, but we have some default models in there, and it's really a way to generate alternatives for kind of the first stages of planning an energy corridor. There's also a new print tool that's shown at the upper center, and it's fairly straightforward. You just click on that button after you've set your map up to what you'd like to show, and then you can choose from different layouts and resolutions and click Make PDF, and it'll create that map for you. We also do quite a few different updates to the database. So those aren't shown here, but I'll have that in another slide. Oh, this slide. So we've been adding this year quite a bit of data related to climate change recently, but more generally energy and water. So the new climate change layers are listed there, and the one at the top right is baseline water stress. That actually has quite a bit of information besides the map layer that you're viewing there, which is the ratio between withdrawals and available flow. You can see that some watersheds are much more stressed than others in terms of how much water is being withdrawn versus replenished. Recently, we added some data from the American Bird Conservancy. This has been on their website as KML files, and we spent some time converting that to GIS data. So if you want it in GIS form, you can download it here, or you can contact the American Bird Conservancy. We returned a copy to them. And these are the categories, and there's separate layers out of the data they provided, but quite a bit of information about bird species and where they occur. And then we regularly update the mapping library. So energy infrastructure data, we have commercial data there, and that is updated quarterly. So that's pretty frequent. And we've also updated these other layers, EPA brownfield sites, and also the National Register of Historic Places, polygon and point layers. So as I mentioned, I'll be talking about reports today. I think it's one of the most rapid and useful parts of the tool, and there's a couple steps involved in running a report, and it may not be evident what you're going to get when you run one. So the intention today is to introduce you to the variety of topics in those reports and show you how much useful information you can pull out of them. So just a broad look at those here. We have a corridor report, and that was in the tool originally. The routing tools I mentioned are additions to corridor tools and IcePick mapping tool. What the corridor report lets you do after you've sketched a corridor on the map or generated one by a route between 2 points is it lists the general context of the corridor in terms of political jurisdictions it crosses, and then it has a whole series of sections with everything from elevation profile to protected lands and other siting features, infrastructure that it crosses or contains, that sort of thing. EPA brownfield, I'm going to show you these reports, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing them right now, but just quickly here. The brownfield report, that's a study by an Environmental Protection Agency. They have a lot of properties that they monitor, and former industrial sites, former mines, and other categories. And each one of those has been evaluated in terms of its potential for energy. So it's not just brownfield data, but it has quite a bit of analysis in the information, as you'll see in that report. We have 3 energy infrastructure reports, and those are pretty valuable. They're based on commercial data, so that's changing quarterly, and you can get, what I'll show today is statewide summaries of these categories, but you can definitely in any region that you want to study and get lots of information about these 3 categories of energy infrastructure. The model result report is pretty narrow in focus, but it lets you look at a model that you've run and see how it performed in an area of interest. It'll be more clear what that means when I give you the demo. If you want to study the environmental side of a location, we have a habitat and a protected lands report. We had an imperiled species report that depended on some commercial data, and we weren't able to continue hosting that due to the cost of the data. So right now we have habitat and protected lands. And on the right, the scope of the project originally covered a lot of different energy technologies, some of which didn't lend themselves to actually a siting model, but they were related to particular existing infrastructure. So you'll see there, existing hydropower dams. That was a study by Oak Ridge National Laboratory where they evaluated hydropower dams and their potential for being upgraded in efficiency with new turbines and things. So the older the dam is and the larger it is, the more potential it has for an efficiency improvement. Kind of similar and easy to confuse report, there's a non-powered dams report. That's a separate study on flood control dams and other facilities that do not have hydropower generation at this time, and that estimates how much power they could generate if they were if turbines were added. So as you can see, most of these are involved with permit databases or existing facilities and get into their potential for use as energy sources. So we have a question on the chat. How is protected land defined? Does it include lands protected by conservation easements? Yes, it does. There's a National Conservation Easement Database, and it taps into that layer for those conservation easements. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to switch to the browser. And here I have the home page, and the URL for this is ISPC Tools, EISPC tools.anl.gov. You can browse the contextual web pages here without registering any of these sections at the top. You can peruse. I'll point out the policies and regulations database here. That's probably one of the most important parts of the home page. You can put filters like a state, maybe some category. Here's renewable portfolio standard. That's pretty important. And you can do a search on the database. So there's a state summary for Florida. Just open that in another tab. So a group called CESA, the Clean Energy States Alliance, put together these summaries, and they're pretty informative and concise. And then you can see a whole series of information. So this is for Florida. A little bit of background about the study. Energy Resources is informative if you're not familiar with the particular technology in terms of generating power, and you can see a quick fact sheet on how that power source works and a few relevant references that you can check out. So at the top, I've logged in already, but you'll see a register and login link at the top of the page if you haven't done that yet. And the purpose of registering is mainly so that you can save your work between sessions. And once you've logged in, you click Launch Tool, and it launches in another window. So I've already done that, and I've been running a series of reports just to kind of speed things up for the demonstration. But just generally, it'll just take about 5 minutes to show you the major parts in the tool. The data library, mapping library, is opened by clicking the library button, and you can sort by the titles or any of the other columns. There's also a drop-down arrow here that you can use for filtering. So I already have one in there for, I was looking at pump storage layer. So I can type in a keyword here, and it'll isolate those particular records and let you find them. So these are actions. If I click this, it'll add that layer to the map and over here. If I click the second action, it'll download a PDF with metadata, so that's more technical documentation about the data. And most layers allow you to actually download the data itself. So if you have GIS software, you can download it and use it in your system. So really the only exceptions for download are either extremely large data layers, which, only a few are really too large to be downloadable as a single file, and then commercial data that we aren't allowed to redistribute. All right, and then, so if you want to study an area on the map, and I'll just put one in so you can see the process. So if we wanted to study in, say, northwest Nebraska, we open that, and we can sketch an area. So you might be viewing some data on the map as you sketch this, or just do it freehand. So it's added it to my list of analysis areas. Corridors, by the same token, I've got a lot of those in there because I'm demonstrating the corridor tools and things. You can pick new corridor and then draw. And obviously you would probably have something on your map as a basis for your corridor location. Double click to finish, and you can designate a width for it, say 2,000 feet, and save it. And it just added it to the list there. Right now we're making some final touches to the corridor tools that are being added. So this second choice, Generate from Endpoints, and the Suitability Models tab is grayed out for most users. If you'd like to try those out as a beta tester until they're released for everyone, feel free to contact us and we'll let you try them out. The main thing there is that they're not fully tested and finished, so we just wanted to make sure that people didn't get confused if it wasn't all there. Okay, so I've entered a analysis area in a corridor, and I'll shortly explain how those are used. Let me skip to results. When you first register for the tool, you already have a whole series of results, and these are the power plant models. So you see on the very right there, it says System. We've pre-computed all the models for you. That's just to make them more convenient to add to the map. And if I, say pick one, here's the utility scale photovoltaic model. I can add it as a map layer. And this, there's a scale of from 0 to 100 for suitability, where 100 would be the most suitable areas. And if I zoom out here, clean up the map a little, you can see that kind of the southeastern region of the eastern interconnection is most favorable, not only for good climate, clear skies, and lots of sunshine, but also favorable siting factors based on the assumptions of the model in the tool. So if you're interested in modeling, we've got other webinars and demonstrations we've done on those. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at that you can run these models in the tool. Okay, so let's go back to this Analyze section where we're going to spend most of our time today. And it's divided into two sections: Models, which is where you run those models that I mentioned, and Reports, which I'll focus on today. So I've run examples of each of these reports so I can call them up quickly, but for now let me just show you the whole process. So if I wanted to run a habitat report for that northwest Nebraska area, I click the Run Report action, and it's asking me for the region. So I want to pick an analysis area, and I want to go to northwest Nebraska. It allows me to specify two distance zones around my area. And I can just default. If you want to put some notes about the report, why you ran it, or anything else, you can fill that out, and you can click Launch Report. There's a little message that pops up at the right saying that it's been launched. And if you go back to your results, so I typically sort it in reverse order by the creation date. And you can see that the one I just launched is listed here with the name that it defaulted to. And you can see it was run for the extent for Northwest Nebraska, and this checkbox that means that it's already finished running. So to view the reports, you need to have pop-ups enabled, and you can click on this display the generated report action, and here's the habitat report. So let me spend a little time about the content here. First of all, there's a little header on every one that gives a list of the counties and the state that it overlaps, and the area in square miles of the area I drew and those two distance zones around it. And then this particular report has habitat divided into sensitivity levels. So the area that I chose is about 70% has some concerns about habitat. And getting specific about that, the habitat analysis is based on over 70 different layers that exist, many of those for a particular state or region. So when that particular layer overlaps, it'll have some input about habitat, and each of those was evaluated by a team of subject matter experts and given some sensitivity levels. So this first one, the layer is called Ecoregional Portfolio, and it was produced by the Nature Conservancy. So if you click this link, you can get the metadata to understand more about the background of this particular habitat data. And it's listing, for example, the Sandhills Prairie occurs in the area that I sketched. And there's actually 9 different areas that overlap the portion I drew. Things will be listed if they occur even within that outer zone. So you're really primarily interested in this first column. So important bird areas from the National Audubon Society. There were none identified in this analysis area, but there's some within 25 miles. And so there's a whole series of fairly detailed data sets related to habitat that this report is based on. So there's 4 categories of information it found, and if you take this name, you can also find that in the mapping layers. So why don't we look at this biologically unique landscape layer. Oops. So I'll just search on here it is. So if I zoom in, so the report identified that this particular layer has an overlap, and the mapping, if you add it to the map, you can see the specific location within your analysis area. So it's a really rapid way to peruse the habitat data and find out what's happening in the area you're interested in studying. There's also a composite layer for habitat. If you do a search for just habitat, and you spell it right, so this composite, it's a combination of all the different habitat layers that report is using. So if you just want to see general sensitivity map, then you can use this. And if you want to find out the specific layers that contributed to that composite, you can look at this map. If you're really interested in the rationale that went into all this, there is a report. If you go to the Documents tab on the home page, there's a categorization document. I don't have it at my fingertips here, but let me see here. I guess it was on the first page. Yes, this fourth one, categorization document for protected lands, habitat, and imperiled species. So that's the documentation for it. I know I'm getting a little deep in the weeds, but there's been a lot of work done with protected lands and habitat in the tool. Okay, so as you can see, you really bounce between library, analyzing things, and reviewing them on the map in an iterative fashion when you're working. So you might define your study area, run some reports, and then view data related to those reports back on the map again. Okay, so now let's try a corridor report. That's one of the, what I feel is one of the more useful and generally informative ones. So I went back, here's my demo corridor that I drew. And again, I can say run a report with this. So there's many ways to run a report. You can go to a corridor analysis area and run it directly, or you can go to the Analyze tab. It does the same thing. So if we choose corridor report for this demo corridor, launch that, and go to results. So this hourglass means that it's running. This one's got more content, so it takes a little bit longer to run, but usually the reports are pretty quick. Okay. So this one has a lot of information, and one thing I'll say is if you're trying to decide a route for a corridor, at least on a general level, you can use this tool, and then if you see something that it's saying, okay, there's an issue here, then you can add that to the map and revise your corridor to avoid some particular sighting factor, run a second corridor report, and compare the two to see how they can, compare in terms of the issues that they've identified. So the first sections are descriptive, although you probably want to avoid going straight through a major populated place. I happen to find a very low population area. So this would be within the footprint. There's an estimated about 500 people. So even then you might want to see if there's some residential area you need to avoid. And then there's elevation profiles. So these are divided in milepost ranges. Gives you a sense. And then slope, you can find the maximum slope that was encountered in one of the sections. And then there's a series of infrastructure crossings, so you can get a sense, okay, here we've got a US Highway 281 is a 4-lane highway. That's probably a pretty significant crossing that we need to take a look at. And then even farther down, we've got Interstate 80 and US Highway 81, also at four lanes. So a series of typical infrastructure or water, electrical transmission, electrical substations within the buffer, pipelines, and then a few more miscellaneous military installations within 3 miles, airports. So there would be issues with towers near an airport. You'd want to be aware that those are nearby. And then an assessment from the USGS about seismicity. And then this is a brief breakdown of protected lands and habitat over the course of the length. So you can see kind of over the distance of the corridor where those occur. I can also run a protected lands report and a habitat report to find out exactly what these intersections were. So that's kind of the process of inputting an analysis area or a corridor and getting a report on it. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over lots of different examples of these reports. So I ran there's a Susquehanna-Roseland corridor that was fairly controversial in the east, and it's an actual transmission line. It had an environmental impact statement on it, and I'm going to show the protected land report for that. So this one has some hits. The protected areas database is a national layer, has some pretty useful information in it. And here we found that there's some more highly sensitive protected areas that corridor is crossing. And by the way, we had some comments from the National Park Service that we were underestimating the sensitivity for some of their properties. So some of the yellow and orange categories in this report are going to be increased. You can see there's just dozens and dozens of different protected lands that corridor touches, and some of them are deemed pretty highly sensitive. And then from the National Conservation Easement Database, we have some easements that occur there. So we're close to the coast, so there's some marine protected areas within 25 miles, but those won't be too relevant. Pretty significant is we're crossing 2 national trails, including the Appalachian National Scenic Trail, and there's some scenic byways that are nearby but not within the corridor. So just by this quick analysis, you can get a pretty quick breakdown of what might be of interest for protected lands for any corridor or area that you designate on the map. Okay, so for the same corridor, we have a habitat report. And again, within 50 miles, there's an artificial reef. So concentrating on the first column here, ecoregional portfolio, we've got some partially sensitive lands there for habitat. Focal areas of conservation significance, and that was put together by the Nature Conservancy. So we've got some priority areas there. Maybe for the Delaware Water Gap was one of the very significant properties that was involved in that environmental impact statement. We've got forest focal areas, part of the Atlantic Flyway. That's from the National Audubon Society, and etc. Important bird areas. So as you can see, these are kind of screening level analyses, but you can pretty rapidly get lots of detailed information, at least find the data sets that they rely on, and you can do this all in minutes. All right, and then I had run a corridor report similar to the one that I sketched on the map, the same sort of information, but for that particular corridor. All right, shifting gears a bit, one of the really useful reports is a power plant report, and I ran it for 4 different states. So when you're launching reports, so here I would have just picked power plants, and instead of drawing an area on the map, I just selected state and the state that I wanted to run it on, and I can adjust those buffers. So for example, let's compare Iowa and New York. So it starts with the summary of the existing transmission, where these color bars are those distance zones. And these are a little interactive, so if you click the blue and the green and the red, the green is the stuff within the footprint. So for a state, it would probably be the most relevant. So you can see, surprisingly, Iowa still has a majority of coal. It's pretty well known for its wind energy, but it still generates more power using coal than it does from wind. And then let's look at New York. So the portfolio for New York is quite a bit different. It's predominantly natural gas, and it has some wind energy there, not a lot in comparison to natural gas. And then let's maybe I ran it for South Carolina and Arkansas as well. So it's a quick way to get, really the total capacity. This is the nameplate capacity, not the actual generation. But the capacity for South Carolina, so it's got pretty high nuclear. And then finally Arkansas. So Arkansas is high natural gas, pretty much almost no wind, and very different mix of energy technologies. So as you continue down the report, here's some specifics about it with numbers and counts of power plants. And then there's a planned section. So here, keep forgetting which state I'm looking at. This is Arkansas. So Arkansas is planning to put in over 140 megawatts of wind, and it's actually, looks like one wind farm at 150 megawatts is being planned. And as you continue down, you can actually see names of plants and what county they occur in and a little bit more details about them. So this gets pretty detailed as you scroll down, but it does give you, if you just want to reference something out of it, you can quickly do so. This is all being pulled from the commercial Platts data that we have added to the website. So just to show you what this is based on, if I go to the library, I could put in power plant. So I've got existing, planned, and there's a special miscellaneous category here, but I'll just skip that one. Okay, so we can see the distribution of, let's go to the planned power plants. So the color is the type, and the location obviously is there. Report can really give you a lot of information about that. You can also filter these, so say you're interested in just natural gas power plants. The styles, I just right-clicked on the layer to open the style, or the properties window, and then pick the styles tab. And here I'm just showing the natural gas power plants that are planned. So it's kind of a mix. You can see things on the map, but you can also pretty rapidly learn about them with the reports. There's also an identify tool, so if I click on one of these features on the map, I can look up information this way as well, but just on a single click basis. All right. And I did a quick spreadsheet comparing those states. So if I wanted to do some graphs or something, I can just copy and paste out of those reports or print them. And here I'm comparing each state's total operating capacity by power plant type. And I did conditional formatting to just quickly shade them by their values. So you can see New York has the highest generation in natural gas, and you can kind of gauge how that portfolio between different states compares between states and between energy resource types. Okay, we have a couple of questions on the chat. Is there any chance the mapping tool will be expanded someday to show ERCOT subject matter too, so maps will not just stop at the SPP border with ERCOT? Certain maps like electric transmission. We've been talking with DOE about extending the tool to the west. So far we've gotten a lot of feedback about that, and it's mainly a matter of available funds. So we haven't been given the green light to go ahead and expand it, but that's a pretty frequent question. One thing about it is that the energy infrastructure data includes the whole state. So if I look at transmission, clean up a little bit. So we have the whole state of Texas loaded in terms of the data. So any state that overlaps the eastern interconnection, we've loaded the infrastructure data for the rest of the state. So at least you can view it on the map. Okay, and then Andy Oliver asked, is the corridor analysis tool able to identify a best route to avoid protected and other sensitive lands? Let me take a minute to answer that. I think I can do that pretty quickly. I've run some corridors using that tool. Oops. I wanted to show that. So just a simple one in Spencer, Iowa. Just this general region. So I took a planned transmission line in northwest Iowa. This area is somewhat constrained for transmission, but it has a lot of potential for wind energy. And I just sketched this with the tool. So then I used a modeling process using those same endpoints, and it's just maybe the balanced model. So it generated this route here, and the way I did that was first I started with a suitability model, and I had this general purpose corridor model. And if I open that, I see that there's a whole series of siting factors, including protected land. So in this case, protected land's been given a weight of 3, and it uses that composite layer as a basis for siting factors. Then if I open up that, you can see that the exclude from development has 0 suitability, and then the lesser sensitivities are still 20 and 50% suitable. So I can change these suitability levels, and I can change the importance of protected land to that surface. And what does that surface look like? I'm sorry, let me go here. I'll get back to reports in a second here. So first you generate this surface. So it's like the other maps. It's got a suitability range from 0 to 100. And then you specify the endpoints that you want. So I'll click on here. Oops, sorry. And the zoom in tool showing there. And then it prompts me for what layer. So if I use the general. So I generated a surface with those assumptions embedded in it, and then I specify the endpoints and which model I want to use, and then it launches the process to generate that route. So this route's already generated, but you can see it's going around some of the lower suitability areas, including areas that were crossed by the straight line corridor that I drew manually. So it's really a matter of how highly you weight protected lands or habitat in your analysis, and you can try a lot of different assumptions to see what routes are generated. So hopefully that gave you a quick answer. I did a webinar about corridor routing, and it's on the homepage. If you look in the news section, there's a recorded webinar where I spent quite a bit of time talking about the corridor analysis part tool. All right, let's go back to reports. So you can see that corridor is running. One of the things that we need to work on is how fast those run, but they do take a bit longer to run than most of the other parts of the tool. Okay, let me try to get through more of these quickly. So I've run a couple other, here's Iowa, I've run a pipeline and electrical transmission. Those are a little bit less graphical, but we have different categories of pipelines. So you might want to study a county or some very specific region, and this will tell you the total length of natural gas, crude oil, and refined product pipelines that occur in that footprint, and they're divided up in diameter ranges. Okay, and then kind of a similar report for electrical transmission. Where am I here? Okay, so here we've got voltage categories, and so again, this is for the state of Iowa. Looks like we have about 17,766 miles of electrical transmission lines in Iowa, with the largest ones being in the range of 345 to 450 kV. There's also apparently 2,544 substations, and this will also break those down by their overall capacity. So if you're planning some kind of project and you're studying an area, you can find out how many substations are within it, and of course you can draw them on the map and see where they occur. Okay, that covers the infrastructure reports. A very different type of report. There was a study by Navigant about demand-side resources, and I ran this for New Jersey. And this kind of emulates the appendix of the report and some of the tables within it. So it's a quick way to get a specific report for demand-side resources with projection to future contributors to that. And regardless of the area you draw, it'll add these graphs for each of the states that are overlapped by the area, but it doesn't get any deeper into it. So if you choose a county, it'll give you the graph for the state that county is in. It won't give you a county breakdown necessarily because the data aren't that specific. And then you can go directly to that report. It's on the home page under Documents. You can find that demand-side resources report here. So there's a PDF, and you can get the whole report with its methodology and graphs and results for all the states if you just want to get it from that source. But we try to integrate it into the tool and make it easy to access. All right. EPA Brownfield report is so if you're putting a power plant into a certain region, or you're trying to see what the choices are, there's some incentive programs for siting power plants in brownfield areas, and they've been pre-screened for their suitability for different energy types. And so here I've run it for Connecticut. But it may make a lot of sense to site a power plant in a brownfield area instead of in some other, say, undeveloped area or some place that might not have been disturbed. So for the whole state of Connecticut, it looks like it's primarily RCRA sites. And there was a time when I remember what that acronym stood for, but okay, so we've got the Stratford Army Engine Plant, and it's fair for wind energy potential. So these are all the sites that occur in Connecticut, but there's a section of the report based on different types of generation. So wind, not a lot, it's at fair. So solar energy generation potential is rated as moderate for utility scale and good for non-grid connected, and there's a ton of brownfield sites. Then there's geothermal energy. We have temperature and depth data, so it doesn't really tell you exactly how much it would help favorably for geothermal, but it gives you a little bit of data related to geothermal. And then gets into biomass, outstanding for biomass generation. So all this information is in one layer for the U.S., but this is a different way to view it. So here's the actual details about the properties, quite a bit of information. So if I go in the mapping library, let's turn off, pretty clear here. So we get to the the name of the program where they did this work is called Repowering America. And you can see these on the map. So what I've done here is just showed you the report, but here are the different sites on the map. So you can investigate them individually by clicking on them on the map, or you can summarize them for a state or some other region of interest by looking at the report. All right. So I think you're probably starting to see a pattern in terms of what the reports do and how they work, but they're very miscellaneous in what they show. All right. Hydropower dams and non-powered dams. So let me open both of those side by side. I've run both of these for the state of Missouri. So non-powered dams, these are, you've got the year completed, but these are 1 megawatt or greater in potential for generation. And you can see that we've got 166 megawatts of potential generation from 4 facilities, including this one here, Locken Dam 24, in Pike, Missouri. So that one might be great potential interest for adding hydropower generation to that Locken Dam that already exists. In comparison, there's an assumption if a dam is 50 megawatts or greater and over 40 years old, then it has pretty good potential that you could get efficiency improvements. So there's a different study relates to that. If you click on this, you can get the study as well as the metadata. And there's this is the nameplate capacity of those facilities, and then you can assume potential of 5% efficiency improvement in general, and with some study you can get a much more specific estimate of what might be able to be generated. So even though 5% may not seem like a lot, for a large facility like this, it may be worth upgrading the facility. So that's related to hydropower, 2 different strategies for adding more capacity to hydropower, neither of which involves building any new facilities in terms of hydropower dams, which can be pretty controversial. And these, again, are mapping layers on the map. You can find the same information and see where these facilities are on the map. There's quite a few water-related reports. So there's a lot of areas that have been evaluated already for river or tidal hydrokinetic. And so these are, this report lists, which I ran again for Missouri. So here's some authorized capacity for pump storage, for hydrokinetic project permits. And so Hickman Bend project on Mississippi River has potential for generating 114 megawatts. All right. Final energy report, there's some data from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. It's fairly coarse data, but it's offshore data in the Atlantic. So I drew a little area outside off the coast, and what this data has is power density by month and wave height, average wave height by month, and wave period. And these are all important factors for assessing suitability of hydrokinetic projects offshore. So you can see, April and September would be good, but then you'd have a lull in power generation during the midsummer months when you might really need that power for air conditioning and cooling. Okay, so I ran a model result report, and this report is last one I'm going to go over, but it's pretty important. So when you run one of these suitability models, and I ran it for wind, look at wind. So if I run this model for wind energy, it generates these suitability levels, but I can designate an area on the map that I want to study. So I picked Sioux County, Iowa, and that's a place that I'm pretty familiar that has pretty high wind capacity. That's up in the northwest corner of Iowa, and I ran a model result report for that. Takes a minute to load. So this is a pretty fine-grained way of finding out how well the model did. So in that county of Iowa, the average score is 60 for the whole model, and it ranges from 0 to almost 100. And you can see what contributed to that score. So all these layers contributed, and it's all, in general, pretty favorable for wind. And then you can see the distribution of values within that. So here's the overall model. So there is a portion of the area that isn't suitable, and then most of it's in the middle range here. And then for each layer that went into the model, you can see that most of these factors were highly suitable for wind turbines. And then the report finishes up with all the parameters that went into that model. So these are all the layers that contributed, what weight they were given, a little description about them, and then all the suitability scores that went into it. So there's quite a few inputs to this model, and this will document them for you. So that's a pretty, as you can see, I'm trying to do these webinars quickly, and we're already in an hour. So there's a lot of information in this tool, a lot of capabilities. I hope you find them useful, and I think reports are an especially useful part of it. Most of them only take less than 30 seconds to run, and you can run them from any area on the map within the Eastern Interconnection and get a lot of different information quickly. You can use it for planning potential energy projects, assessing your choices for different generation strategies, looking at portfolios of different regions and how the power is generated or how many transmission lines. You get a lot of statistics like that. And you can assess model results or plan corridors, at least at a screening level. So just to sum up, I hope you find the tool useful, and thank you for your attention today. If there's any questions, I'll stay on the line.